Money Out of Thin Air, A History of Financial Self-Destruction. Thesis. No empire collapses suddenly. Collapse is always preceded by a financial illusion, debt conjured out of thin air and sold to the public as prosperity. From ancient empires to modern superstates, the same fatal flaw reappears. Those in power, bankers, central planners, or politicians, inflate economies with unbacked debt until the real world can no longer support the fiction. When trust dies, the system resets. Historical exhibits. 1929, the Great Depression. Speculation, leverage, and collapse. Wall Street banks issued credit recklessly, fueling a speculative bubble in stocks and real estate. Much of the wealth was leveraged, bought on margin, detached from real assets. When the crash came, collateral evaporated, taking down the banking system. The U.S. government confiscated gold, devalued the dollar, and restarted the system with a new monetary base. The unregulated market had imploded. Government control filled the vacuum. 1945, the collapse of colonial command and war-driven debt. World War II bankrupted Europe. Unable to fund the war effort from their tax base, colonial powers turned to central banks and bond markets, essentially printing money to buy their own debt. Britain rigged bond auctions. Germany printed fiat marks to keep the war machine running. Meanwhile, the U.S. sold arms and supplies, accumulating gold from every participant. By war's end, the old colonial empires were broke. Bretton Woods reset global finance, making the U.S. dollar the new anchor of trust. 1991, the Soviet Union, bureaucratic credit and systemic breakdown. The USSR didn't have capitalist bankers, but it had planners playing the same role. Credit was allocated by bureaucratic fiat, not market reality. Loss-making sectors were endlessly funded. Oil exports crashed in the 1980s, gutting hard currency flows. The ruble was non-convertible and worthless outside its borders. When reform began, the currency hyperinflated and internal debt became unpayable. The empire dissolved, not from invasion, but from internal financial rot. 2008, Wall Street's housing mirage. Banks once again sold debt like candy. Subprime mortgages were bundled, rated AAA, and sold worldwide. When homeowners defaulted, the paper wealth collapsed. Lehman fell, and the global system nearly followed. Central banks rushed in with trillions in quantitative easing. The system didn't reset, it was inflated again. But the core lesson remained. When the banking system manufactures credit without discipline, collapse isn't a risk, it's the endgame. This content is brought to you by Bobby Giggs. Promote your brand here and reach a wide audience across platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Follow the links in the description to get started. 2020, the pandemic panic and the trillion-dollar deluge. A virus shut down the world, but the real contagion was financial. Governments printed unprecedented sums. The U.S. Federal Reserve expanded its balance sheet by over $4 trillion in months. Stimulus checks, bailouts, and corporate welfare were handed out with no new value created. Asset prices surged while the real economy stalled. Inflation returned. Fiat trust cracked. And once again, the system relied on conjured money to postpone a reckoning. Pattern recognition. Across these events, a brutal pattern repeats. 1. Speculative expansion or political necessity drives reckless debt creation. 2. Money is conjured without backing, detached from real productivity or collateral. 3. Trust erodes. Systems collapse either gradually or violently. 4. The only way out is a reset, usually through war, default, or devaluation. The actors change, bankers, bureaucrats, empires, superpowers, but the script doesn't. Core principles. Debt is money conjured from thin air and sold recklessly. No empire falls without first being over-leveraged by its own bankers or their equivalents. You cannot taper a Ponzi, you can only reset it. Trust, not gold, fiat, or credit, is the true currency. Once lost, the system fails. Strategic takeaway. If the system is built on illusion, the strategy is clarity. Recognize the signs. Exponential debt, speculative euphoria, institutional denial. When those appear, the collapse is already underway. It's just waiting for a trigger. Hold position, build conviction, exit the illusion. Because when money is printed without consequence, collapse is not a question of if, but when.